The chandeliers of Harrington Hall glimmered like constellations suspended in mortal air, scattering gold light across silk, pearls, and powdered mirth. Yet beneath such ostentatious radiance, Lady Eleanor Ashbourne felt the familiar ache of invisibility settling upon her shoulders like a winter shawl. She stood at the edge of the ballroom, hands clasped, posture faultlessly elegant, yet surrounded by empty space where admirers ought to have lingered. Her gown, a deep shade of plum that suited her complexion with quiet dignity, seemed to whisper its longing for appreciation. A single pearl pin anchored her hair, modest yet graceful, unlike the jeweled crowns glittering upon younger heads. She had chosen refinement over spectacle. Society rewarded spectacle. Her younger sister, Arabella, glowed in the center of the floor like a triumphant rose. Men clamored around her as though drawn by scent, every laugh she offered ringing with bright, effortless promise. Eleanor watched as a young viscount nearly tripped over his own boots to secure the next dance. Arabella's beauty was undeniable, her charm a polished instrument she played with enviable ease. Eleanor harbored no malice. She loved her sister with sincere affection. Yet love did little to soften the sting of comparison. She touched the lace at her wrist, tracing delicate patterns like prayers she feared went unanswered. Whispers rose like pale smoke from groups of ladies adorned in jewels and arrogance. Still unclaimed, murmured one. Past her prime, said another, fanning herself with idle cruelty. A pity, truly, sighed a third, as though Eleanor were a wilting bouquet no gardener bothered to refresh. She pretended deafness, though every syllable penetrated like a pin to silk. She lifted her chin, determined that if society would not see her brilliance, it would at least witness her poise. A gentleman approached. Eleanor's heart fluttered. Hope, foolish yet persistent, stirred. Perhaps someone at last had perceived her. But as he neared, his eyes skittered past her like a stone skipping water, and he bowed hastily. "Pardon me, Lady Eleanor, but may I inquire after your sister? I seek to secure a moment of her company." His words struck with practiced politeness, his interest none for her. She offered a smile, gentle but brittle, and directed him toward Arabella. When he hurried away, she exhaled slowly, steadying herself against disappointment that by now should have grown dull. Yet it never did. Music swelled, strings blooming like roses, the harp shimmering delicate promises. Couples glided across the polished floor, their feet whispering stories of courtship and ambition. Eleanor turned slightly, allowing her gaze to wander. If she appeared to be merely observing, perhaps the loneliness would not seem so bare. She traced the gilded arches, the opulent draperies, the candelabras dressed as though in holy vestments. Beauty encased her, yet she felt like a solitary figure trapped beneath glass, admired only for remaining undisturbed. Then the air shifted as though the hall itself inhaled. Gasps traveled like sudden wind. The Duke of Whitford had arrived. His presence cut through the music, his entrance a calm force. Tall, composed, with a posture that suggested command without conceit, he moved with the certainty of a man well accustomed to reverence. His dark coat was impeccably tailored, his gloves pristine, his gaze sharp enough to silence idle tongues. Rumor had long crowned him the most desired bachelor in London. Titles envied him, mothers hunted him, and daughters rehearsed smiles in hopes of catching his attention. Eleanor had seen him only once before, at a garden party where she had read beneath a tree, while others fluttered like butterflies. He had not spoken to her then, though his gaze had brushed her once, fleeting but curious. Tonight, she expected nothing from him. Why should she? The world did not grant miracles to women who faded into the wallpaper. Still, she watched as he greeted dignitaries with cool grace. Arabella fanned herself, eyes sparkling with anticipation. "He looks divine this evening," she whispered to a friend, unaware of Eleanor's proximity. "Imagine the envy if he chose me." Eleanor turned her head, not out of bitterness but weariness. Wishes were fragile things. She had learned not to hold them too tightly. Then, without warning, the Duke's gaze found her. She stiffened, unsure whether to avert her eyes or hold his scrutiny. He did not look away. Instead, he began to walk, each step measured, deliberate. Conversations faltered. Eleanor's breath thinned. Surely her imagination misled her. Surely he approached someone behind her. She half turned, checking, praying not to appear presumptuous. But there was no one. He stopped before her. Silence spread like spilled ink. Eleanor's pulse hammered with disbelief and dread. Bowing with composed respect, he extended his hand. "Lady Eleanor," he said, voice low and unwavering, "would you grant me the honor of this dance?" Shock rippled through the room. A lady dropped her fan. A gentleman choked upon champagne. Arabella's expression froze in bewilderment. Eleanor stood motionless, heart thundering, her breath suspended between disbelief and fragile hope. For a moment, her voice abandoned her. Then, with a grace born of practiced composure and wounded dignity, she placed her hand in his. The hall seemed to lean toward them, hungry for scandal or miracle. As he led her toward the floor, Eleanor felt the faint stirrings of something she had not dared entertain for years. Possibility. As they took their place among swirling couples, heat rose in her cheeks, not from vanity, but from the terror of being seen after so long spent in delicate shadow. His hand at her waist did not presume. It merely steadied her, as though he sensed every tremor she fought to conceal. The room blurred. The music breathed. For one heartbeat, she allowed herself to believe this moment might be real, and the world might finally witness her. The days following the Harrington ball unfolded like a whispered rumor carried through parlors and drawing rooms. Eleanor moved with quiet grace through the Ashbourne estate. Though her thoughts pulsed with the memory of the Duke's hand upon hers, the subtle certainty in his gaze. She had danced with him once, only once, yet it had felt as though the world had stilled to witness a question neither of them dared to voice. Now, she sought refuge in routine, hoping the flutter in her chest would subside. It did not. Conversations drifted past her like drifting petals, talk of gowns, gentlemen, the latest pianoforte prodigy. But beneath every polite exchange lived a wild, uncertain thrill she could not dispel. On the third morning, as silver mist lifted from the lawns, a maid entered her chamber carrying a single white rose. Dew clung to its petals as though it had been plucked moments before dawn. Eleanor blinked in surprise. "For you, my lady," the maid said, offering a small envelope sealed with wax. Eleanor's fingers trembled as she broke it. No lengthy declaration, just 3 understated words in firm, elegant script for your morning. Her heart fluttered. She knew no suitor who wrote so simply, so confidently. And she knew only one man whose gaze could speak without language. Downstairs, in the breakfast room bright with sunlight, Arabella fussed over ribbons, discussing an admirer's compliments with joyous vanity. Eleanor placed the rose beside her plate, hoping no one would notice. But her mother's eyes, sharp despite age, fell upon it. "A token?" she asked, tone soft yet edged with curiosity. Eleanor flushed. "It is nothing, merely a flower." Arabella laughed lightly, oblivious. "For me, I suppose?" Eleanor shook her head. "No, dearest. Addressed to me." The brief silence that followed was a delicate blade. Arabella blinked, surprise flaring before it faded beneath practiced brightness. "How charming," she murmured, and resumed her chatter. But a fracture of unease lingered behind her smile, and Eleanor felt it like a draft through polished walls. The next morning brought another rose, and the next, each accompanied by a short line, subtle, thoughtful, intimate, "For your reading, for your quiet courage, for the grace others fail to see." Eleanor hid them in a small wooden box, as though guarding something fragile. Yet servants whispered, and whispers traveled faster than carriages over cobblestone. Soon, salons buzzed with speculation. Who would send such tokens to the elder Miss Ashbourne? Some claimed pity, others scented scandal. Lady Vivian, whose ambition glittered brighter than her jewels, lifted her brow and murmured, "Unlikely, unless the gentleman's taste is peculiar." Eleanor held her composure, but her heart trembled with both dread and wonder. The greatest unrest stirred when the carriage arrived at Week's End bearing an invitation. Lady Ashcroft, famed for her ostentatious gatherings, requested their presence at a garden fete. Arabella nearly sparkled with excitement. "The Duke shall attend, I am certain," she declared, twirling before a mirror. Eleanor felt her stomach tighten. She had no wish to be thrust into speculation's glare, yet refusing would appear cowardly. She prepared in silence, choosing a gown of dusty lavender, elegant, unobtrusive, and safe. Arabella, radiant in pale gold, looked like sunrise. Eleanor felt like twilight, beautiful to some, overlooked by most. The Ashcroft gardens glimmered under lanterns as dusk settled like a silk veil. Musicians played beneath arching trees, their notes drifting over fountains and manicured hedges. Guests laughed, sipped champagne, and strolled along moonlit paths. Eleanor walked among them with careful poise, aware of eyes that lingered too long. Somewhere, Arabella fluttered among suitors, her laughter carrying like tinkling bells. Eleanor sought solace near a marble urn draped in ivy, inhaling the scent of jasmine to calm her racing pulse. It was foolish, she told herself, to hope. A dance meant little. Roses might be nothing but politeness in disguise. She lifted her chin, determined to smother expectation before it bloomed too wildly. Then she sensed him. The Duke approached with measured strides, evening air parting around him. His presence at once steadied and unsettled her. "Lady Eleanor," he greeted, voice warm beneath its polish. She curtsied, heart trembling. "Your Grace." He held a small velvet box. A trivial gift, yet one I hoped you might accept. Panic flared. She looked around, sharp eyes glittered in the shadows. "Your Grace, I cannot," but he opened the box, revealing a delicate gold locket engraved with her initials. Not gaudy, but exquisitely personal. Eleanor's breath caught. Such a gesture was no accident. Before she could respond, footsteps rustled nearby. Lady Vivian emerged, predatory delight glinting in her eyes. "How touching," she purred. Eleanor's cheeks burned. "You misunderstand," Vivian's smirk sharpened. "I understand perfectly. A duke's charity can be very generous indeed." Shame stabbed like ice. Eleanor snapped the box shut, thrusting it back. "I cannot accept. Your Grace, forgive me." The Duke's jaw tightened, not in anger but resolve. "I ask nothing but that you believe my intention sincere." His voice wrapped around her like velvet drawn taut. Arabella appeared then, beauty radiant yet startled as she perceived the scene. Vivian leaned close, false sympathy dripping. "It seems your sister has secured admiration at last." Arabella stiffened, pride wounded. Eleanor's heart twisted. She stepped back, wishing to vanish. But the Duke spoke, voice calm as a blade. "If admiration were currency, Lady Eleanor would be wealth itself. Society merely lacks the vision to see it." A hush fell. Even the music seemed to falter. Vivian's smile froze, Arabella's eyes widened, and Eleanor felt tremors beneath her composure. He bowed slightly, then turned, leaving whispers swirling in his wake. Eleanor's pulse thundered. This was no longer subtle, no longer safe. As lanterns flickered and night deepened, she stood amid perfumed air and quiet scandal, clutching the unopened locket box he had pressed gently back into her hands. She had not accepted, but she had not returned it either. The weight of possibility trembled within her grasp, fragile as a rose petal. Yet beneath her uncertainty, a spark refused to dim. She knew scandal had taken root, but so too had something gentler, braver, and infinitely more dangerous. For the first time in years, Eleanor felt the faint, trembling outline of hope, a hope both exquisite and terrifying. And as distant footsteps approached, she sensed that the night's revelations were not yet done, nor its consequences fully. Beneath a sky bruised with winter violet, the Whitford winter garden glimmered beneath glass panes dusted with frost. Lanterns glowed like captive stars among evergreen boughs, casting soft halos over orchids and winter roses nurtured against nature's cruelty. Eleanor stood at the threshold, breath trembling in the cold air. She had come to return the locket, She had told herself it was duty, dignity, self-preservation. Yet her heart beat with a restless ache, as though it wished to remain unguarded despite all she knew of disappointment. She had arrived early, hoping the Duke might not yet be present. But hope and circumstance rarely obeyed mortal plans. As she took one step across the marble, she heard the soft click of boots behind her. His voice followed, steady, composed, and threaded with something gentler than formality. "Lady Eleanor." She inhaled sharply, spine straightening. Turning, she found him there, framed by silver moonlight through glass. He looked impossibly tall, shoulders etched with quiet assurance, his expression unreadable yet intent. "Your Grace," she managed, her fingers curled around the velvet box she had carried like a burden. "I wish to return this." She held it out. He did not reach for it. Instead, his gaze searched her face with unsettling sincerity. "You would surrender it so easily?" She forced calm. "I cannot accept what provokes such whispers. The world already believes what is untrue." His brow lifted with quiet challenge. "Do you fear the world's belief more than your own desire?" Heat rushed to her cheeks. "It is not my place to entertain desire," she said, softer than she intended. "I am hardly the woman society imagines at a duke's side." He stepped nearer, the faint fragrance of cedar and winter spice trailing him. "Society imagines nothing. It merely echoes itself until truth withers beneath the noise." She looked down, voice tightening. "They say you pity me." His answer came swift, almost sharp. "Pity is an insult I reserve for men who follow fashion and call it choice." She lifted her eyes to him, troubled, uncertain. "Then why me? When every ballroom turns toward youth and glitter and promise, why look to the woman standing in the quiet?" A flicker of something raw crossed his face, admiration, perhaps, or longing tempered by discipline. "Because the quiet," he murmured, "is often where courage resides." Eleanor's throat tightened. He extended his hand, not to take hers, but to gesture toward the moonlit path. "Walk with me." Reluctantly, she obeyed. They moved between glass walls veiled in frost, past camellias and pale blooms breathing in warm lamplight. Snow tapped lightly against the panes, like memories seeking entry. Eleanor spoke first, voice scarcely above a breath. "I cannot bear the thought of being made a spectacle, to be chosen only to become a subject of ridicule. I have endured enough of that." He slowed, turning to face her. "And do you believe I seek to parade you for amusement?" "I do not know what you seek," she whispered, "only that my name sits strangely on society's tongue. My age, my quietness, my lack of glitter." His jaw softened, eyes warm as embers. "You speak as if those are faults." She looked away. "In this world, are they not?" A delicate hush filled the garden, as though each leaf leaned closer to listen. The Duke's voice dropped, intimate yet restrained. "When others looked at you, they saw absence of sparkle. I saw a presence of depth, a mind that listens, a heart that does not perform." Something inside her quivered, fragile as frost on glass. Yet she feared surrendering to tenderness only to find humiliation waiting. "Words are easy," she murmured. "Affection is a currency spent freely until it costs something." His gaze sharpened. "Then allow me the expense." She blinked, unsteady. "Why persist? Why not turn to the effortless radiance my sister embodies? She is adored, envied, celebrated." His sigh held no scorn, only weary candor. "Because adoration offered by the many often weighs less than regard given by the one who sees truly." They stopped near a marble bench, moonlight smoothing every line of his face into noble clarity. He removed his gloves slowly, as if stripping away ceremony itself. He did not reach for her. Instead, he held the gloves at his side, a subtle vulnerability. "Tell me honestly," he said, "do you wish I had chosen differently?" Her voice faltered. It would have spared confusion." He studied her. "And your heart, would it be spared as well?" Silence trembled between them, heavy with unsaid truth. Finally she spoke, barely audible. "I do not know how to be the woman you think I am." His reply was immediate, steady. "You need not become anything. You are already the woman I see. Her chest tightened, hope and fear warring. The world will not approve. The world, he said with quiet defiance, has offered you nothing but comparison and cruelty. Why grant it authority over your happiness? Eleanor's eyes glistened. What if I accept this gift, this possibility, only for the world to laugh louder? He stepped close, stopping only when breath brushed breath. Then let them laugh. Their laughter changes nothing of you. And if they scorn you, they scorn me. But I do not bend to idle tongues. His sincerity pressed against her doubts like a warm hand against glass. She opened the velvet box with trembling fingers. The locket shone softly, a promise shaped in gold. She traced her initials, fragile, awe-blooming. I do not know if I am brave enough, she breathed. He leaned just enough to lower his voice to a vow. I will lend you my courage until you find your own. A tear slipped unbidden, but she did not turn away. And if I fail you? His eyes softened. Then I shall be honored simply to have walked beside you a while. Footsteps echoed faintly, someone approaching from beyond the glass corridor. The spell quivered, vulnerable to intrusion. Eleanor's heartbeat surged. Someone is coming. He did not move, gaze unwavering. Let them. But she stepped back, instinct fighting impulse. He held still, as though resisting the urge to follow. The approaching silhouette sharpened, recognizable, dangerous in its familiarity. Arabella. Eleanor's breath caught. The locket lay open in her palm, moonlight glinting upon gold. Arabella paused at the entrance, her eyes widening as she took in the scene. The Duke unloved, Eleanor's trembling hands, the intimacy suspended in winter hush. Shock flared into wounded disbelief. Eleanor, she whispered, voice cracking like ice beneath sudden weight, and the world, once wrapped in glass and silence, felt poised to shatter. Arabella's shocked whisper still trembled in the winter air when the garden door burst open fully, releasing a rush of cold and scandal in equal measure. Snow swirled inward like breath drawn sharply by fate itself. In the corridor behind her, faces appeared one by one, ladies adorned in jewels and feathers, gentlemen stiff with curiosity, expressions sharpened by hunger for gossip. What had been a private breath between two hearts now lay displayed beneath a merciless lantern glow, as though fate wished to test them before granting grace. Eleanor felt her spine chill before the frost touched her skin. Everything within her screamed to step back into shadow, to dissolve into silence, as she had done 1,000 times in drawing rooms and supper halls. But the Duke stood, unflinching, bare hands at his side, as though bearing himself before judgment willingly. That sight both steadied and terrified her. Arabella's gaze darted between them, sisterly worry tangled painfully with disbelief and injury, as though betrayal had been struck where none was intended. Is this real? Arabella whispered, voice cracking like thin ice beneath too much weight. You, and him? Eleanor opened her mouth, but words caught like thorns. Society did not punish truth. Society punished who spoke it. The Duke answered instead, voice-tempered steel. It is real. A ripple passed through the watching crowd. Shock, envy, outrage, awe. Each reaction carved itself into Eleanor's nerves. A marchioness whispered behind her gloved hand. A young suitor blinked as though robbed of a secret dream. A dowager's lips thinned into contempt sharpened by age and privilege. The Duke's announcement traveled faster than breath. Arabella's eyes filled, a storm of hurt softening into something brittle. Why did I not know? She whispered. Why did you not trust me? Eleanor swallowed, each heartbeat like a blow. Because I did not trust myself, she confessed, voice trembling. Arabella looked away, wounded pride eclipsing sisterly tenderness. You might have told me. The Duke stepped forward, offering gentle gravity. Lady Arabella, if blame must fall, let it fall upon me. Your sister did not seek this. She has received it all the same. Arabella snapped softly, grief sharpening her poise. And I appear the fool. Gasps rustled like silk caught on thorns. Eleanor reached for her sister's hand, but Arabella stepped back, tears shining as she fled through the glass corridor, skirts whispering like broken promises. Eleanor's heart chased after her, aching with guilt. But footsteps and murmured judgments held her fast, society, like ivy, refusing to uncoil once it had latched onto a scandal. The Duke turned to Eleanor, voice lowered but fervent. "Permit me to speak plainly." She shook her head slightly, every ear strained toward them. "Not here." "Here," he whispered, "where truth cannot hide." Panic fluttered in her chest. "You would offer honesty to wolves?" "No," he replied, tone stripped bare of hesitation. "I offer it to you." Then louder, rich with command, he addressed the watching assembly. "Let no one mistake my intentions. Lady Eleanor Whitford has my admiration, my regard, and yes, my resolve." The hush fractured into stunned whispers, scandal blooming like nightshade. Eleanor's pulse roared. The Duke, in full view of society, had chosen her, not as secret fancy, but declaration. Yet triumph did not greet her. Unease glimmered across jeweled faces, and admiration for him soured into scrutiny of her. She felt the shift like icy fingers along her spine. The ballroom beyond the glass hummed with the gathering storm. Tonight, whispers would become weapons, truths twisted into spectacle. A baroness stepped forward, false sweetness dripping like poison honey. "A bold preference, your grace. Though one wonders what prompted such singular taste." Eleanor stiffened. Another lady smirked. "Perhaps maturity recommends itself more than innocence." Laughter tittered, brittle and cruel. A gentleman murmured, "He always did favor oddity over convention." The Duke's gaze chilled. Convention has birthed far more dull minds than happy marriages. But barbs had been cast, seeds of doubt planted. Eleanor forced her voice steady. "Your Grace, please, let us leave." He extended an arm, not command but offering. Her hesitation lasted one fragile heartbeat before she placed her hand lightly upon his sleeve. The touch, simple yet irrevocable, drew a collective breath from the crowd. As they crossed the winter garden, every footstep echoed like judgment rendered. Lanterns flickered. Snow pressed harder against glass, as though the world outside sought to seal their choice from intrusion. They entered a quieter hall, marble and moonlight stretching ahead. The Duke paused. "I fear I have thrust you into storm." She shook her head, though fear rippled beneath her ribs. "No, I stepped willingly." His eyes warmed. "Did you?" She exhaled shakily. "Perhaps I stepped blindly." "Blind faith," he murmured, "is often braver than sighted caution." Yet bravery felt hollow against the weight of consequences already forming like storm clouds. A servant hurried past, bowing hurriedly. Face pale, news had traveled. Somewhere in the distance, Eleanor heard laughter rise, shrill and venomous. The ball resumed, but now every note of music sounded like mockery. The Duke's expression hardened. "They will speak." "They always have," she replied softly. "Now they speak of you," he countered. She lifted her chin despite trembling. "Then let them. They cannot remake me with words." His voice gentled. "No, but they may seek to break you." She inhaled deeply. "Let them try." Yet beneath her defiance lay dread. Fear not of ruin, but of disappointing him, failing to be equal to his faith. He studied her face, something unspoken flickering in his gaze, admiration tinged with protectiveness, and something deeper still. Then with quiet certainty he spoke. "Tomorrow I will go to your guardians. I will state my intentions formally." Her heart lurched. "So soon?" "Delay invites doubt," he murmured, "and I would give the world no time to invent shadows where there are none." Her breath caught. A proposal, unspoken yet clear, hovered between them like candle flame in restless wind. Before she could answer, a voice sliced through the corridor, trembling with elegant fury. "Your Grace." Lady Whitford, statuesque and severe, approached like judgment personified. "Explain to me," she demanded softly, "why my youngest daughter weeps in humiliation while you escort my eldest as though triumph has been won." Eleanor stiffened. The Duke bowed with solemn respect. "It was not my intention to cause harm." "And yet harm is done," Lady Whitford replied, gaze cutting. Arabella's prospects fracture, and Eleanor, she paused, eyes narrowing, now faces the burden of your impulse. Eleanor flinched as though struck. The Duke straightened, voice calm but unyielding. It is not impulse. It is choice. A dangerous one, Lady Whitford hissed, for all involved. Eleanor stepped forward, voice steady despite the fracture within. Mother, please. Lady Whitford's gaze softened a fraction at her daughter's tremor, yet steel returned swiftly. If your heart is set upon this, Eleanor, then prepare. Society will not forgive easily. The Duke answered quietly, let society attempt its cruelty. It will find me standing before her. Slow footsteps sounded from the stair beyond, familiar, hesitant. Eleanor turned and saw Arabella, face pale, eyes red-rimmed yet resolute. Silence thickened. Snowfall clothed the morning like a blessing disguised as a shroud. London stirred beneath frosted rooftops, chimneys breathing pale smoke into a sky the color of washed silver. Eleanor stood at her bedroom window, fingers curled around the velvet curtain as though it were an anchor against the weight of dawn. Today would decide everything, future, dignity, love, or ruin. Society had feasted upon whispers through the night. She could feel its judgment gathering like birds sensing storm. Each breath she drew was fragile, uncertain, yet strengthened by a flame that refused to falter. She had been overlooked, dismissed, bowed beneath comparison. Yet this morning, her heart did not shrink. It rose. A knock sounded, firm yet tentative. Arabella entered, her complexion pale, but gaze steady. A warmer hush filled the space, sisterhood reclaimed after the wound of revelation. They are already downstairs, Arabella murmured. Mother, Aunt Catherine. And she hesitated. The Duke. Eleanor's chest tightened. How does he stand? Arabella's lips hinted at a reluctant smile. Tall and terribly unmovable. If judgment burns, he appears made to withstand flame. Eleanor exhaled shakily. Then I must try to stand beside him. Arabella approached, taking Eleanor's hand. You are more than you believe, and far more than society deserves. The sisters descended the grand staircase, footsteps echoing like steady heartbeats. The house felt heavier than ever, carpets saturated with unspoken words, portraits regarding her as though fate balanced on every command. In the drawing room, Lady Whitford sat poised, expression carved with steel and sorrow. Beside her, Duke Evercrest rose. His presence cut through the morning like a blade of certainty, polished boots, dark coat dusted with snow, a white lily pinned to his lapel like winter's vow. His gaze found Eleanor instantly. Warmth ignited beneath her ribs. He bowed not to society, not to her mother, but to her. Reverence given where society had offered disdain. Lady Eleanor, he said, voice low, steady, reverent. I come as promised, not to defend a moment, but to declare a lifetime. Lady Whitford's brow tightened. Bold words. One hopes they are more than passion's haste. He met her scrutiny without flinching. Haste does not guide me. Conviction does. Aunt Catherine cleared her throat. The eyes of London turned today. They will judge her. They may reject her. Eleanor lifted her chin. Then let them. I have lived in their gaze all my years and have yet to find salvation in pleasing them. The room stilled. The Duke's hand moved ever so slightly, a silent confirmation of pride. Lady Whitford exhaled. You challenge tradition. You invite scandal. I protect what I cherish, he replied. Your daughter is worthy of honor, not whispers. Eleanor's breath trembled. To be defended openly, without shame, felt like sunlight where she'd known only shadow. But one voice had yet to be heard. Lord Whitford entered quietly then, cane tapping, face solemn yet unexpectedly gentle. I have listened long enough, he announced. What I require is truth. Duke Evercrest, do you seek my daughter for admiration alone, or do you seek her for marriage? The room held still as suspended snow. The Duke stepped forward. Not admiration, not intrigue, love. The word fell like a stone in sacred water. No hesitation, no apology. I seek her as my wife. Eleanor's breath broke like dawn. Arabella's hand found hers, grip fierce and trembling. Lady Whitford's eyes shone, resistance pierced by tenderness she could no longer deny. Lord Whitford nodded slowly, gravity and blessing entwined. Then speak your vow before us, that we may carry it as witness if storms come. The Duke turned fully to Eleanor, and the world shrank to only his voice, his breath, his constancy. Eleanor Whitford, he said, from the moment I saw you, silk dimmed by expectation, dignity unbroken despite cruelty, I knew society was blind. You are strength beneath grace, quiet fire beneath frost. I choose you not as consolation, but as crown, not as shadow, but as compass, as my equal, not ornament. With you, I will walk into admiration or ruin alike, so long as your hand does not leave mine. Silence fell, a silence too full for breath. In her chest, her heart bloomed with fierce disbelief and aching certainty. Tears shimmered, unfallen, bright as frost-kissed dew. And I, she whispered, voice softer but no less strong, choose you, not for rescue, but because you have seen me when others would not. If society judges, let it judge. I would rather stand in storm beside truth than warmth beside false praise. Something inside her unfurled, no longer apology but arrival. The Duke bowed his head, reverence deep. Lord Whitford lifted his cane. Then my blessing is given. Let scandal speak, love shall speak louder. But even blessing could not silence London. The front door burst open, a servant breathless. Your Grace, the street outside, crowds have gathered. Pamphlets printed, carriages lined. They demand to see you. Eleanor stiffened, panic threatened, but the Duke offered his hand. Walk with me. Lady Whitford hesitated. If you step outside together, society will mark you. Then let it mark truth, Eleanor answered quietly. Arabella whispered fiercely, go, show them who you are. Together, she and the Duke moved to the door, each step a vow made visible. Outside, winter air bit sharp as crystal. A sea of faces turned, ladies clutching fur, gentlemen flushed with feverish curiosity, newspaper boys thrusting scandal sheets aloft. The forgotten sister, one cried. The Duke's folly, another jeered. But when the couple emerged, hand in hand, silence rippled outward like shock through glass. Eleanor's fingers trembled, yet she did not withdraw. She stood straight, unbowed, chin lifted in defiance laced with grace. The Duke's voice rang clear. You gather for spectacle, but witness instead choice. I stand with Lady Eleanor Whitford, by honor, by heart, by future. Murmurs shifted. A woman whispered, courage. A gentleman frowned, reconsidering prejudice. A young girl clutched her mother's sleeve, eyes shining with hope. Eleanor felt a weight lift, not society's judgment gone, but its power dimming beneath truth. Judge, if you must, she spoke softly, voice carrying in winter stillness, but know this, a woman unseen is not a woman unworthy. The crowd inhaled. The city itself seemed to listen. Then, as snow drifted in delicate blessing, the Duke turned to her, not for audience, not for conquest, but for connection, and kissed her gloved hand. A gesture tender, reverent, unstoppable. Applause stirred. From one, then another, then many. Not universal approval, not fairy tale triumph, but something real, earned. Respect edging past ridicule, admiration breaching gossip. Love claiming breath, where silence once ruled. Eleanor's eyes warmed. Not victorious, but victorious enough. You chose her, a woman whispered. No, the Duke murmured, gaze fixed only on Eleanor. She was always the choice. And in that moment, beneath winter's hush in society's uneasy wonder, Eleanor understood she had crossed not into scandal, but into self. A woman no longer overlooked, but claimed by herself first, and then by love unafraid to speak her name.